Just wanted to welcome everyone again here to our beautiful SF office. We're so thrilled you all are spending your lunchtime with us today. I've also been told we have about 750 people that we're supposed to sign in virtually today for the webinar. So welcome to all of the virtual attendees as well. So as Januka mentioned, my name is Micaela. I lead our early stage team here at SVB, everything formation through Series A, tech companies. I'm joined by a lot of our great team members in the audience who greeted you at the door. So please don't hesitate to come up, introduce yourself to your relationship manager, spend some time chatting with us after the event. We'll have 30 minutes or so for networking. I wanted to take a minute just to pay homage to this event series. This is something that our team has been running since before I joined the bank, actually. We've been able to feature VCs from a bunch of great firms like NFX, Box Group, Inspired Capital, just to name a few. And today we're really excited to welcome Erica Brescia, Managing Director at Redpoint Ventures, into our ranks. She has an incredible background. We'll dive into it more in detail here in a minute. And really the goal for the next hour is for us to learn from Erica's experience, nearly 20 years in the industry, for us to really unpack the moment we're in today. It's a wild time. We were talking about on our call the other week, really unprecedented. And so we'd like to address everyone's questions. We want this to be as interactive as possible. And really the hope is that everyone in the room and over Zoom can walk away from this with at least like one really tangible, actionable item that you could implement into your fundraising process tomorrow. So please don't be shy. We'll have Q&A towards the end and hope to address everyone's questions. And then the last thing, I just want to level set in the audience. So about 70% of you all are building in AI, 40% in enterprise or B2B, about 15% in consumer, and then 15% in physical, frontier tech, climate. 40% of you have yet to raise a round, and 50% have done a pre-seed or seed, and about 10% have raised a Series A. All right, turning it over to you, Erica. Would love for you to introduce yourself, maybe starting with where you grew up, where you went to school, and kind of what got you into this crazy world of tech.
Sure. I know every time somebody says it's been 20 years, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so old. It's just like a bad reminder. But thanks for having me. We love SVB. You guys have been amazing partners to us for many, many years in your former and current incarnation. And we're really grateful for the partnership. So thank you. It's always fun to do things with you. So as mentioned, I'm Erica Brescia. I'm an actual Bay Area native. I was born and raised in Danville. My parents had nothing to do with technology whatsoever. My mom was in real estate. My dad's company may or may not have put the glass in this building. He had a company. I grew up watching him build it into one of the top 5 in the country, but he was like the first person in his family to go to college and came in and it was doing residential and grew up and did the Palace Hotel and all the First and Howard buildings and a lot of other cool things in the city. I mentioned that because it was very formative for me in bringing me into entrepreneurship and venture. You know, I grew up watching him bring a team of people together and do and build incredible things. And I saw how they grew professionally. I saw how his company helped them build incredible lives and families for themselves. I was at their weddings and, watched him go from college to like running the company now. One of the people who he hired now that he's retired. And I just always felt that energy of wanting to do and build something like that for myself. That led me to I went to USC, so, not Stanford or Harvard, which is where like almost everyone in venture, I think it seems like, went to, and many folks here. I wanted to go for their entrepreneurship program, which at the time was one of the best in the country. And I ended up studying actually entrepreneurial finance as part of that. Because I felt like it would give me a really good foundation. I honestly don't know how much useful it was. I learned a lot more working for my dad's company than I did probably from USC. I'm a very hands-on person. But that led me, I took a job while I was in college at T-Mobile and met a bunch of people through that. And one of them introduced me to my co-founder, this guy who is a very deep technologist in the open source world. And I went to help him for a little bit and became enthralled with the world of open source and the opportunities to build companies that could help deliver this incredible software and value to the world. And so we built a company called BitRock, a little tiny company. We bootstrapped. We realized it was never going to get very big. We built another company called Bitnami. We went through Y Combinator back in 2013 when it was really tiny. We had 42 companies in my batch. I had a 6-week-old baby at the time, which I do not recommend doing, but maybe we'll talk about that later. Bitnami was doing basically software supply chain security, but we were like pitching it as software packaging and deployment in the early days of cloud. It was acquired by VMware in 2019, right when we were going out to raise a round of funding. We had Microsoft, Amazon, VMware, Oracle were big customers. And before we got marked up too much, they came and made an offer that made a lot of sense to us. So company was acquired. I ended up going to GitHub after that. I was COO of GitHub. I came in right after the Microsoft acquisition. I was there through Shipping Copilot. And I ended up in venture 4 years ago after some real resistance on my part. I thought I'd always be a builder, but fell in love with the Redpoint team. I've known Satish there for a long time. And now I think I have the absolute best job in the world because I get to work with folks like you and build this next frontier of technology. And it's like a true privilege.
Amazing. Well, thanks for taking us back through all of that, and love the story of your dad and the kind of building company construction. These things kind of shape a lot of who we end up to be. Let's double click a little bit on Redpoint. Would love to chat about Redpoint, just high level, what makes Redpoint unique. There's so many early stage investors out there, especially ones that claim to do early stage, and sometimes it almost feels like a competition of like who's the earliest. And so I would love to hear more about the firm.
Yeah, so I'll start with the firm and I'll tell you why I joined, which leads to why I think we're unique. We've been around for 26 years. We have about $6 billion under management across 2 series of funds, early and growth. I'm on the early stage, which is focused from inception to Series A. We used to say checks up to 15 or 20 million. Now we say checks up to 30 or so million because the market has changed, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And we invest about 50% in infra, and that includes cyber, and about 50% in apps. And now we're starting to do a little bit of frontier technology as well. One of the things that I think is a really distinguishing characteristic of our early stage team is that we have really deep founder and operational DNA. You've heard my story. My partner Satish founded 2 Redpoint-backed companies after working on Java at Sun back in the very early days. Both of his companies exited successfully. He came in, he led this Series A in Snowflake, which worked out pretty well as like a number of other really incredible companies. So he's been on the Midas list for 6 or 7 years now, I think. And my partner Alex has founded 4 companies in the CRM and like IT help desk space. His last company was acquired by Salesforce. He ran the Desk.com business, grew it to $1.5 billion, reporting into Mark Benioff. Then he went to go be CEO of Campaign Monitor when Altimeter was putting in, I think, $250 million, and then came into Redpoint. And so, it was really important to me if I was going to move into venture that I was going to be surrounded with operators who like really knew what that journey was like and what it meant to be a good partner to early stage companies. Because the reality is our job is like, part board member, but it's more like coach, therapist, just sometimes like execution engine or at least API to the rest of the Redpoint team, because we do have, recruiting and a BD function, and we have PR and go-to-market coaching and all these things that we can bring to bear for companies. But I really think it comes down to like, who is this team and how are we able to engage with and make really great partners to early stage founders? And so the way we win most deals is by introducing founders, like prospective founders, to companies that we're already working with and have them, convey what it's like to work with us. I think our team is passionate. We care very deeply. We're very team oriented. We have equal compensation at every level in the firm. So that means there's no like internal politics and hierarchy and things to deal with in some other firms, which means that like we're all just oriented towards doing the best deals and then supporting those founders in the best way possible. So I end up helping. I was on the phone with like a COO from a company that I had nothing to do with funding other than voting on the deal, because she needed some coaching, and I had experience that was relevant, and that's very common. So I'm proud of the way that we work with and support founders, and I think it really, you start to feel it when you spend time around the team, and that's why I joined in the first place.
Yeah, that's great. It seems like such a team sport. Like everyone's kind of chipping in to help in their area of expertise where they need to.
Especially right now, because everything's changing so much. I think it is the most exciting, but also the most difficult time, certainly in my lifetime, to be a founder. And it takes a village, just like raising a kid, it takes a village to build a company. And I'm really glad that we have a great village.
Yeah, amazing. Before we go into today's environment, because we'll definitely want to tap into what's going on right now, I did want to flash back a little bit to your Bitnami days. So YC 2013.
Yeah.
Tell us more about what that was like. What was different about raising in those days? I'm sure lots of things, but also like what was the same? Just curious to hear some of the top level memories, besides being also having a six-week-old newborn.
Yeah.
Which sounds tough.
Again, really bad timing on my part, but so I think what's very different is you just have so much more information, especially now with AI. It's so much easier to learn more about the firms and the people and how to raise and what people's real investment styles and preferences are. There's just so much more content online in general about building a company, how to do customer development, kind of the playbook for what each phase of building. I mean, I don't know how many books have been published since then, but it's countless, let alone all the blog posts and videos and everything else. And so I think like VC seemed a lot more like a black box. I think founders today are much more savvy and better informed than they were back in 2013. The other thing is there are just a lot more firms. There are a lot more seed firms. There are a lot more early stage firms. A lot of growth firms have come much earlier stage. And so there's a lot more to sort through. And the processes tend to move very, very quickly. And so for founders, I think fundraising is just an insanely intense process. Like you can see them day by day, and founders get more and more tired because they're doing these probably 16 or 18-hour days for like 2 weeks while they're just trying to get through all of their meetings. And I think, the YC rounds still happened really fast, but now like Series A rounds happen really fast. And that's, it's a lot more to just keep up with and process and like high stakes decisions under pressure than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's this total access, new access to information in a way that we never have had before, as you mentioned, both on the VC side, in terms of diligencing the founder that's coming to the table, asking for your money, but then also on the founder side to be able to diligence you all as well. So how do you think about that kind of dynamic, and is there less information asymmetry in a way because there's more democratized access to that information?
I think so, but I'll tell you the part of diligencing we've built a lot of AI tooling, and we're literally shipping like weekly, if not daily, internally at Redpoint. And I can talk a little bit about that. It's really, really fun work to be a part of. And I've built some of my own stuff too on top of that. When we use these tools though, it's more usually about the market and the competition. I will tell you one thing that hasn't changed, although maybe the velocity has increased, is back channel and founders, especially when you're doing early stage investing. We're trying to understand like, who are these people, and are they really, truly, truly special founders? When we're underwriting a company, we need to believe that it can be at least a $10 billion outcome. And right now we're like, can this be a $25 or $50 billion outcome? And so every day we see pitch upon pitch upon pitch. And the question we're always asking ourselves is, are these people special enough to reach it to that level? Like we meet a lot of really fantastic founders, but it's like, who is exceptional, which is a word we really think carefully about. And that comes down to people referencing, and you don't find that information online still. So I think that aspect of our jobs is incredibly important, and you can't, like, AI doesn't actually solve that problem. What AI does is let us come up to speed on new categories and markets, and more quickly vet whether or not we might be interested in a deal outside of just who the founders are, based on the dynamics in the market and the opportunity to build a big company.
Yeah, yeah. One of the questions posted in the chat was around, at the pre-seed seed, like you mentioned, early stage, there's not that much information about the company. A lot of it you're basing off the founder background and what have they done, and what's the probability they're going to get to that next level. How would you recommend founders, especially in today's environment, with AI, with everything going on, prep themselves for that initial fundraise and think about kind of telling that story, that narrative? How do you position traction when you don't actually have the data yet to back it up?
Yeah, I mean, before I get into any of this, just the traction, you don't have the data to back it up. Like, be honest and be transparent, because, we have to have, like, really tuned BS radars. Like, do not try to BS the VC. Like, we see thousands of companies a year, and as soon as we get a whiff of this person is overselling what they've built or what they've done, you're almost immediately off the list, especially with the volume of companies that we're processing today. There's just so many companies coming to market. So I think first and foremost, like, everything that you do and say should be, like, very grounded in truth. One thing we look at a lot is backgrounds. Like, you could have done something exceptional in school. We see a lot of people who have won, like, medals in mathematics competitions, or started businesses when they were in high school, or overcome some, personal challenges. There's a lot in a person's background, even if you're really young, that can show us that you're exceptional. Like, YC has this question, or used to, on their application that was like, tell me a time you hacked something, right? Like, you can hack something. I mean, my son found a way to hack something at school the other day. It was a little on the gray area edge, so I told him not to do it again. But like, I think I'm looking for that kind of a thing if you're young and haven't had, like, a huge career where you can point to having designed some killer product or something like that. So on your own story, like, we really care about who the founders are. We're going to be on this journey with you for, like, 10 years. Remember that we're people too, and it's are you exceptional, but also, are you exceptional and do I want to work with you, and can I relate to you, and can I build some kind of connection to you? And so I think, like, digging into your background and your passions and kind of bringing those to help people understand who you are and what makes you special is really important. The next thing is, when it comes to the company, one thing, we have this concept my partner came up with called simplifiers and complexifiers. We're looking for people who can communicate very crisply, not just what they're building, but how they think about the market, how they think about the opportunity, and where the risks are and where their open questions are. And so really practice storytelling and making sure that what you're communicating is simple and it's crystal clear. You help people kind of place you in the competitive landscape or in the market. And don't be afraid to admit if you don't know something, especially at pre-seed and seed. We expect that. And today, most companies are pivoting when they start. They get into the market, they get pulled in a different direction. We've seen companies be incredibly successful with pivots, especially with AI, even companies that have been around for several years. And so it's more important to be authentic and honest about what you don't know, but communicate that very crisply. Don't try to, hand wave around it. And when you said traction where it doesn't exist, you can talk about what conversations have you had? How have you validated that this idea is a good one? Have you convinced anyone to be a design partner of yours yet? Right? Like, we're looking for any kind of breadcrumbs that you're going to be able to go and get people to talk to you about what you're building and kind of buy in and want to work with you and spend their time with you even before you have a product to ship. Like, there's a lot of ways to show that you've done the work, you know the domain really well, you have a vision for the product that is hopefully like a strong perspective that is weakly held, that you're willing to change once you meet the market. Those are really the ingredients that we're looking for when you don't have a product out yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. So key takeaways, I think, don't fake it. Like,
Yeah.
fake it till you make it. Be
Don't.
honest, be grounded. But yeah, also be confident. I think so much of your success is around communication, how you tell your story, and kind of how you show up. On that note, is there any company, let's say, or investment you've made where you really underestimated the founding team, maybe at the onset, and then they surprised you, or really any other kind of memorable stories from kind of more early days?
Oh, I have so many. I love all my founders so much. Yeah, I'll tell you, there is a founder that I backed in my first quarter in the business, and he was really is a really stellar engineer. He'd never even built a team before. He'd never fired anyone. Like, he had so much to learn. He was quite young, very, very focused and ambitious. Perfect example of very strong points of view, but willing to hear others and be challenged. And I told him before we gave him the term sheet that I wasn't sure he was the long-term CEO of the business. And I said, I just need you to know that. And my commitment to you is I'm going to do everything I can to coach you, to give you feedback, to try and help you to reach, your full potential and continue on that path. And definitely, if I ever believe that that's not happening, you'll hear it from me first, and we'll go solve the problem together as a team. But I want you to know where my head's at, because I think that's important. And he took the term sheet. The business has been doing spectacularly well, almost a little too well, which has caused a lot of growing pains. The other day, he was like, yeah, maybe when you were telling me that we shouldn't be totally flat, that was right, because now it's really hard to grow because, they've got a big engineering org without like a lot of structure. And I'm all for very lean teams, don't get me wrong, but there's like a spectrum, right? And this is too far into the spectrum, but he is exceptional, and I think will do very, very well long term. And like, growing pains are a normal thing, right? None of us are perfect humans, but he's definitely outperformed my expectations, and I expect will continue to do so.
Yeah, and what about him in particular do you think? Like, what's his superpower? Is it just the technical talent and his ability to attract that type of person?
It's a couple things. I think he really is a visionary. I think he was not afraid to challenge. I'm going to be somewhat vague, though you still might be able to figure out who he is. But he was really challenging the status quo and wasn't afraid to do so. But it came from very first principles thinking. Some people want to be contrarian just because it's cool. He was like, no, had a very specific point of view as to why the way things were done were wrong. And he pursued that vision with extreme vigor. It has paid off. He has continued to call things before they kind of reach mainstream. And I think he can hire really incredible technical talent, and not just from the Bay Area. He's like pretty adept at running a distributed team. And so, I think if you asked me what stood out when we met, it was his maniacal obsession with solving this problem and his clarity around how he wanted to go after it. Mm-hmm. And he was technically exceptional on top of that. Yep. Now I'd say I've seen his vision like play out time and time again, and he's right a lot more than he's wrong.
Yeah. Do you feel like your background, given you've been a founder and an operator, a lot of VCs claim to understand founders, but a lot of them actually haven't been in those shoes. Yeah. How do you feel like that shows up in the way that you coach these founders, or even the way that you can spot some of maybe those underestimated folks and kind of pursue them?
Yeah, I think, I have a lot of empathy for founders. Sometimes I think maybe too much, because when they're going through something hard, I really, really feel it, because I can put myself in their shoes. And so I do think it helps me build trust really quickly and early on. And I think that's the most important thing for a VC relationship. Like at the end of the day, once I've invested in your company, I'm betting my reputation on you and your success. Like I am entirely invested on trying to make the company successful and doing whatever I can to support that. And part of being able to do that effectively is have founders who trust and respect you enough to solicit, listen to, and really hear and absorb your perspective on the business and what is the the right decisions for the company. So I think that helps a lot. I think there have been founders. I had a founder who is very deep in an acquisition process that was going to make them a very substantial amount of money that fell apart, and like being able to be there and really speak to, having sold a company, like I understand the intensity of M&A processes and what it really feels like. And I think in this particular case, I spent a bunch of time in person with the founder. I'm trying to obfuscate the details. That's why I'm like slowing down a little bit. But
Googling,
and yeah, I think when like, you want your partners to be there for you when times are not great, even more so than when times are great. And I do feel like because I have the empathy and I've been on that roller coaster before, I can show up really well when times aren't great. And I think that's important. Sometimes you also need the coach, the cheerleader, the person to ask the hard questions, but also be there to support you. And I do think empathy helps a lot with that.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive into more the market dynamics. SVB recently published our State of the Markets, and we'll send this out to everyone after the chat today. A couple quick hits from that report that I thought were fascinating. We've got 5 AI companies outvaluing all of .com era IPOs, so just a mega amount of concentration into AI. We've seen median seed valuations nearly doubled since 2021, which also happens to be when you started your career into investing. So how is the current environment changing how you all operate? We touched a little bit about AI giving more information, speeding up rounds, but especially interested in the contrast, given you joined in such a kind of boom cycle, but in a different flavor.
Yeah.
So walk us through like what it's like today versus last year versus the year before, and kind of how that's impacting your role as well as how founders should be thinking about it.
Yeah, it's funny because I wouldn't even say it's like year versus year versus year. It's almost quarter versus quarter versus quarter. Yeah. It's changing so quickly. I think there is a lot of concentration of capital happening in companies outside of just like the top AI companies. Even if I'll pick one of our portfolio companies, Serval, it's in the ITSM space, incredible team, product company, tons of momentum, but like they've already raised a lot and people want to continue putting more capital in because it's starting to emerge as a breakout winner. You saw this with Harvey and now Legora, which is another company of ours in legal. I think the view is if you get a great product and a team that's starting to execute really well, all of the investors want to pile into that, and it becomes almost the de facto winner because they build such a talent flywheel. And they build a brand so quickly that they just have a huge advantage in the market. And it's our belief that especially in the app layer, but I think this also flows through to infra, the power law is going to get even more concentrated. And so you're going to see just some winners that are at a scale that we've really never seen before, but there will be fewer of them. And in often cases in a particular domain, maybe there'll be 2, maybe Harvey and Legora are the ones who win, legal, but there probably aren't going to be 20, right? And so, when you play that through the market, what's happening is investors want to make sure that their companies are well enough capitalized to fight the talent war, which is absurdly intense right now. And companies are investing in marketing and branding and go to market earlier. It used to be the scrappy, you go in and you hire a few salespeople and then you start selling and then, it takes a little while. And now we're seeing companies go from like $0 to $20 million in a year, right? And that means that they're having to front load a lot of investment that they weren't before. And so again, that flows into venture and how we think about check sizes. And so check sizes are just getting much bigger at the seed. A lot of companies are skipping pre-seed, going straight to seed. Seed used to be $3 or $4 million. Now we're just talking about this yesterday. We're like, actually, a lot of seeds we have to assume are like $7 to $10 million checks now. And Series A's, as I said before, we used to write like $15 to $20 million max checks in Series A's, but back before that it was like 10 to 12. And now it's like, we did a $35 million check at a Series A, right? Mm-hmm. And I did a $25 million check into a really, really top seed team. And so, I think as founders, the thing to think about is how much capital do you actually need to compete in a market? And you have to get very, very aggressive on go-to-market really early. That doesn't mean you go hire like a CRO out of the gate, but it means that we also actually look for GTM DNA in non-infra companies earlier than we used to. And because companies are executing so fast, and it means you need to learn how to sell. On the flip side of that, what's happening is a lot of companies are getting a lot of revenue scale before they're really mature companies, and they don't always have the right controls in place, and they might they don't have a good finance person yet, and so they don't really manage their spend well. There's a bunch of other things that happen when you raise money and move really fast, really early, where the maturity of the company isn't aligned with the maturity of the revenue, and that's again why you want a great VC to help kind of coach you through that journey.
Makes sense. Those are two really difficult things to reconcile. But I like what you said about the GTM DNA and that maybe being even more important in today's environment. If you can kind of code quicker than you ever have before and build quicker, you still can't replace the ability to sell, those customer relationships, and that sort of more relational DNA.
Yeah, exactly. I will say companies getting founded today, though, there's so much you can do. Companies are so much more efficient and leaner. We're seeing this permeate outside of just code, which everybody is writing most of their code with AI right now from what we see, unless you're doing something really low level, like kernel level stuff or something. But they're also building a lot of automation out of the gate into their GTM and other efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. I liked your point too on the benchmark around pre-seed, seed, and Series A. We're having that exact same conversation here internally. So that gives us some power too of what should be kind of the boundaries of our startup banking group if people are circumventing those milestones straight out of the gates with that first raise. So that was helpful to hear. I would say any other stories if you think about recent deals that you've got done in the last 12 months. How have those founders kind of stood apart or made themselves stand out in this increasingly competitive environment? And are there deals you're passing on today that would have been great opportunities for you all 2021, 22 timeframe?
100% on the latter. I think part of it too is because checks are getting bigger, that means funds are probably going to get more concentrated in terms of the number of investments they do per fund, because we raise our fund and then the market keeps changing, and different firms have taken different philosophies towards this. We could have raised a much bigger fund. We decided to keep our early stage fund at 650, which sounds like a lot, but actually in today's environment, if your deal slots go from 20 or 25 million to 30 or 35 million, once you factor in reserves for follow-on investments, all of a sudden, you go from 30 to 20 deal slots or something like that. And so the bar for funding is really, 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 it's always been high, but I would say it's higher than ever right now. So that has definitely changed. But yeah, I do think the way we're thinking about fund and the bar has changed. You asked about comparing, I think, to the market last year and what has really changed in that regard.
Things you would have passed on.
And you asked about teams and how they distinguish themselves, I guess, in the deals we've done in the last year. I will say we've done more we've only done 2 seeds in the last 12 months-ish, something like that. And one of them was the CEO was the CPO of CrowdStrike, and he's building an enterprise AI security company. So pretty much slammed. I've also known him for 20 years, so I was very high conviction on the team. And another one was a really, really stellar engineering leader who led an AI group out of Stripe. So
Okay.
I will say that these people were like quite distinguished in their career already. That's not to say we are actively looking at doing seeds. We're excited to do more seeds. We're evaluating a bunch, even some that are just stellar teams that don't know exactly what they're going to be building yet. We're totally willing to write those checks. But again, you have to be stellar in some specific way that we can identify. I think when I look at the Series A deals we've done, a lot of it has come down to the taste and judgment that we've seen to date from the founders. And that manifests in a lot of different ways. It manifests in the look and feel of the product. It manifests in who they've hired so far and like what roles they've decided to bring on. We look a lot at whether or not people will be able to attract and retain really top tier talent, because that's what it takes. And so people who have some gravitational pull to them, it could be because they're incredibly charismatic. It could be because they're already respected, on Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever your preferred social is. It could be they've shipped an incredible open source project, et cetera. But we really are looking for things that distinguish folks. And I can tell you one company we did, this company Flora, that's in the design space. We had looked, it's like a node-based design platform for both images and video. And the founder has a really, really interesting background, and it's been a lot of time in the art world as well that comes through when you see this product. We'd looked for 3 years in the design space. We'd looked at 1 million companies. We met this guy, we heard his story, he's an incredible storyteller, and we saw this product, and it is just so beautiful, and customers absolutely love it. And it was an incredibly competitive deal process. They had a bunch of VC offers. And I think part of what helped us win that deal is we had spent 3 years looking for the right one. And so like VCs, I think this is actually, you didn't ask this question, but one mistake I see founders make sometimes is you want to be very simple and crisp and clear when you're explaining what you're doing and really build the story and the picture. But like, really pay attention to signals from VCs, because a lot of the times we know the market that you're in really well, and we might have seen a dozen or more pitches in it. And you could spend half of your time, because our initial calls are always 30 minutes. I see founders all the time. I'll be like, okay, we know this. I'm like, can we skip? I'm like, I don't need you to tell me about like what GitHub does or whatever, so just like be very tuned into that and know that like we usually are coming in with a lot of domain expertise already. And hopefully that shows up in the conversations that you have.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like you said, there's just so much information available now. And then you also have that institutional knowledge of talking to dozens of companies that are pitching you and have seen a lot. Maybe getting a bit more tactical, like, what would you recommend for founder? Let's say you are first time fundraise. You managed to get that initial pitch meeting through, let's say, like a warm intro. You're not a repeat founder. You're not like coming from this incredible, you're not the former CTO of Stripe or something like that. How should you prep for that? Like, what are maybe just some practical tips for someone heading into that fundraising process for the very first time?
Yeah, I think the first is like, remember that the person on the other side of the screen is also a human. Like I see some founders come in and they're a bit nervous, which I guess I understand. I mean, to me, it's funny because I'm not a person I think people should be nervous around, but they end up coming off as like very robotic. And it's hard because we're also trying to like, we want to hear from you and know about your company, but we also want to like connect a little bit, right? And have a conversation and not just sit there and listen to a pitch. So I think founders that invite interaction throughout the pitch and don't get thrown off if we try to jump in and say something, because we want to have a bit of a conversation rather than just sit there and listen for 30 minutes. That's one tip. I think the other thing is, you have to intro yourself at the beginning, which is great. We want to know a little bit about you and your passion and like, why are you the right person to build this company? And it's okay if you haven't built in that space. It might be your parents had a family business in it. We see that a lot, right? But you need to talk about like, why did you choose to dedicate, the next 10 years plus of your life to building this? Make it concise enough that we have time to get through everything else, but really think through like, what are the key parts of you and your story that you think are important to get across to build confidence that you're the right person to build this company. And then I guess one other tip is, don't some founders like really blow off the competition? Oh, they're not good because of this or this or this. Like, if you have serious competitors, number one, I mean, that validates the market. Show confidence in why you think you can win, but talk honestly about where they are and what things you need to figure out to beat them. I think it's a big red flag for us when founders come in and they're so dismissive to the competition, because it feels like you don't really maybe have a grasp on it. And sometimes, remember, we might have a lot of information about that company and who they're doing. They might have pitched us. We might have tried to give them a term sheet and lost. We might have passed on them. Like, and this goes back to my original, like, be truthful and authentic. Like, if you get caught in something like that, it's just an immediate pass for us.
Yeah, it's really hard to dig yourself out of a hole like that.
Yeah.
As well. All right, I want to ask you, like, what have I not asked you yet that I should ask?
I think I'll just share some observations about how deals really get done inside of VC and what happens, because I'll tell you, maybe there's enough info out there now, but I did not, until I got into venture, really understand. Like, when we get a deal, literally the first thing we do, this is not true necessarily of all VCs, we go check out the team. We look at their LinkedIns, we look at who we know, we check our internal database to see who might know them. We even have our own like browser plugin that tells us all these things about the team and the company and the strength of the talent and all these different things with their web traffic. I mean, all kinds of stuff, right? And so if the team doesn't look really strong on paper, then we will have had to hear something from the intro or see something else that piques our interest about connecting. And if we have a bunch of mutuals, we often will text people. Like, I've like gotten like 5 different references on founders inside of 4 hours when they were sent over. The valley is incredibly small, and people will find a way to get back channel on you very quickly. And it's because we have to. We only have so much time in our days to process the deals that come in, and we need to make really, really quick decisions on, is this something I should even take a meeting on or not? Once we take a meeting, like, is this really worth a second meeting, right? And like, how much time do I want to spend diligencing and digging into the space? And so we need to know, like, out of the gate, do we think this team is good enough that we even want to spend the time? And I think I just didn't realize as a founder, like, how quickly information travels on that regard. The other thing is, VCs often know a lot about the other VCs you're talking to, who has passed on your deal, why they passed, what their references that they got were on you, how they're thinking about the other companies in the market that might be raising or coming up to raise soon. There is a lot of chatter across VCs, especially like the more junior folks who tend to work at different firms over time. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Because what it means is that when VCs start getting excited, a lot get excited, and it's because they know that somebody whose judgment they really respect is also excited, who maybe has done more work on this space. But just know, if you start saying like, oh, I've got all these term sheets coming in, or sometimes founders are like, oh, I think I'm going to get a term sheet from this firm tomorrow, we might know that they've already decided to pass and they haven't told you yet. So I don't mean to say this to be like shocking or anything. I just, like, it's what I wish I knew when I was a founder. Now I'm remembering this being recorded. Maybe we won't use that clip on let's not use that clip for social. But I mean, it's true. It is truthful. Like, I do think it's just important to understand the dynamic and what's really going on, because it helps you. Again, I think it reinforces this, like, don't try to BS anybody, but also, like, just information. Assume that the information is out there. Assume people who you haven't met have probably seen your deck, know what you're doing, know what people think of you, etc., and just act accordingly. It can be a huge tool and really helpful, but it's good to be aware that that's happening.
Yeah. No, it's really sage advice, especially because I think sometimes you hear people say, like, you want to generate urgency, you want to create FOMO, you want to like kind of create these arbitrary deadlines to get people on board. And it sounds like that could be a very slippery slope, given
Absolutely
the like
is.
whisper network you're talking about. And then AI like ratchets that up another, 10 points in terms of just access to that at our fingertips. So,
It's true.
yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. Okay, well, I want to make sure we have time for questions. I was going to do a quick lightning round just for fun, but I wanted to maybe just to close out this part of the conversation, maybe on more of an uplifting note. I feel like we've talked about a lot of kind of,
I got to keep it real.
Depressing realities. No, we appreciate the candor. I think it's a good like sober wake up call, but yeah, anything that's, getting you excited about the environment we're in, and then we'll open it up.
Everything is getting me excited about the environment where I'm serious. I mean, this is the most incredible time to be a builder everywhere, like ever. And I think you have so much help at your fingertips. I mean, I'm constantly debating with different models and playing them off against each other to help me think through decisions. And you can do the same thing as a founder. Like, you can get so much better information on everything from like, how should I think about hiring my sales team, or help me evaluate this interview I just did, or what interview question should I ask of my first engineers or my first sales leader? Then you can go and start building stuff. You can build really cheaply prototypes very quickly. Even if you're not technical, you can go out, you can show them to people, you can get feedback. Like, you can iterate so much more quickly and get help and coaching so much easier and like more cheaply than you ever have been able to before. So I think it's actually a really incredible time to be a builder, because none of us are great at everything, right? And I'm constantly going like, wait, how should I think about, rep comp for, a cyber company at this stage? Or how should I think about, how should I write this job description? Like, there's just you can get so much leverage out of your time as a founder. And, like things that you wouldn't have time to really go figure out or ask, you have at the palm of your hand. So I think that's really exciting. And I think it's going to create a much broader set of founders. You don't have to be some like technical genius to build something really interesting. You just need some unique perspective, and you need a heck of a lot of hustle to go build it, because other people have this opportunity too. But I think we're really lucky to be in the positions we all are at this time.
Amazing. AI is a real level up, I guess, right? More competitive, but also more opportunities as well. So that's great. Okay, we'll try this lightning round. Never done one of these before. We'll see how it goes. And then Joe's actually going to take some webinar audience questions. We want to make sure that people on the Zoom get a chance. And Stephen, I promise we'll get to you too before the end as well. Okay, so quick lightning round. Keep the answers quick. Start off with a softball. Coffee or tea?
Both.
Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Night, for sure.
Okay. Inbox zero or controlled chaos?
I think you know the answer from me laughing. It is not in the box zero, sadly.
Okay. Podcasts or books?
Podcasts.
Solo founder or co-founders?
I can't lightning round that one. Both. I'd rather see co-founders, but I'd rather see a solo founder than somebody who speed dated a founder and it doesn't have a good partnership.
Okay, fair. Warm intro or a cold outbound that's exceptional?
A warm intro. I don't read most of the cold outbounds, to be honest. I don't have time. I just literally don't.
Yeah, that's fair. Last question is gut feel or data?
Gut.
All right. Awesome. Can everyone give me a round of applause to Erica?